blue that suggested concern. To his right was a being that Catherine could not identify, a creature made of what appeared to be living light. Admiral Cole Morvith said, gesturing to an empty space before the table. "Thank you for accepting our invitation. We have many questions." "I will answer what I can," Catherine replied. "Let us begin with the obvious question," Morvith said. "How does an unknown species emerge from obscurity and destroy an empire that has terrorized this galaxy for 1,000 years?" Catherine had prepared for this question. She had rehearsed her answer 100 times during the long journey from Vareth space. But standing here in front of these ancient beings who had watched humanity suffer and done nothing, she found that her rehearsed words meant nothing. 300 years ago, she began, the Vareth came to our world. We did not know they were coming. We had no warning, no defense, no understanding of what was about to happen. They landed their ships in our cities and began taking people. Men, women, children. They did not explain what they wanted. They simply took. She paused, steadying herself. The initial harvest took approximately 100,000 humans. The Vareth loaded them onto transport ships and left. Our governments panicked. Some denied that it had happened at all. Others blamed rival nations. We were so busy fighting among ourselves that we almost missed the truth. Commander Price spoke next. 50 years later, they returned. This time, they took 200,000. By then, we had developed radio technology, and some of our scientists managed to track the Vareth ships as they left our system. We finally understood that we were not alone in the universe, and we understood that whatever was out there wanted to eat us. "Eat you," Althan repeated, his scales shifting to a sickly yellow. "You keep using that word. Surely you mean it as a metaphor." Dr. Walsh shook his head. "No, Representative. I mean it literally. The Vareth are omnivores, with a particular taste for intelligent species. They believe that consuming beings with higher brain functions provides them with spiritual power. It is a religious practice as much as a dietary one." He reached into his uniform and produced a small device. "With your permission, I would like to show you what we found in their facilities." Morvith nodded slowly. "Proceed." The device projected images into the air above the table. Catherine watched the council members' faces as they saw what humanity had discovered. Processing centers where humans were kept in cages barely large enough to stand. Breeding facilities where women were forced to produce children who would never see anything but the walls of their prison. Feeding chambers where the Vareth consumed their victims while they were still alive. Believing that the fear and pain made the meat taste better. One of the founding species, a being that resembled a tree made of ice, made a sound that the translator could not process. Althan looked away from the images, his scales now completely white. "This is what they did to us," Catherine said quietly. "For 300 years. Generation after generation of humans born into slavery, knowing nothing but suffering, dying in the mouths of monsters. And during all that time your council did nothing?" "The Vareth were not members of the council," Morvith said. His voice was calm, but Catherine could see something in his ancient eyes. Shame, perhaps. "We had no jurisdiction over their activities," you knew, Catherine replied. "Your intelligence services knew exactly what the Vareth were doing. You knew they were harvesting sentient species for food. You knew they had consumed 17 civilizations. And you did nothing because it was easier to ignore the problem than to solve it." Morveth did not deny it. Lieutenant Santos stepped forward. "What you need to understand is that we did not defeat the Vareth through strength. We had no strength. At the peak of our military buildup, our fleet numbered just over 200 ships. The Vareth had 38,000. We won because we had something more valuable than ships." "And what was that?" Althan asked. "Hatred," Santos replied simply. 3 centuries of it. Every human who helped build our fleet, every scientist who developed our weapons, every soldier who trained for this war, they all grew up hearing stories of what the Vareth had done to us. They all knew someone who had been taken. They all had nightmares about the processing centers." Catherine nodded. "The Vareth made a mistake when they chose to prey on us. They thought we were weak because we were primitive. They thought we were stupid because we had not developed space travel. But we are neither weak nor stupid. We are patient. We are creative. And when we are hurt, we remember. Dr. Walsh deactivated the projection device. Some of the humans we freed from the processing centers had been working in Veroth research facilities. They learned their technology, their language, their weaknesses. When they escaped and found their way back to Earth, they brought that knowledge with them. We did not have to invent everything ourselves. We simply took what our enemy had created and turned it against them. Morvith leaned forward slightly. You speak of escape. How did humans escape from Veroth custody? Catherine allowed herself a small smile. The Veroth believed they had broken us completely. They used humans as servants, as workers, as entertainment. They gave us access to their systems because they never imagined we would have the courage to use it against them. They were wrong. She looked around at the founding species, meeting each of their gazes in turn. We are here now because we want the galaxy to know who we are. We are not victims anymore. We are not livestock. We are humanity, and we have proven that we are capable of destroying anyone who threatens us. We hope that we can live in peace with our neighbors. But if anyone ever tries to prey on us again, they will meet the same fate as the Veroth. The chamber fell silent. Catherine could see the council members processing her words, calculating the implications. A new species had emerged from obscurity. One that had demonstrated both the willingness and the ability to wage total war against a superior enemy. The galaxy had just become a more complicated place. Lieutenant Maria Santos had spent 15 years studying warfare. She had read every book, watched every simulation, trained in every combat scenario that human military academies could devise. But nothing had prepared her for the reality of commanding ships in actual battle. The screams of dying crew members still echoed in her dreams. Now she stood before the most powerful beings in the galaxy, explaining how humanity had accomplished the impossible. She activated the holographic display unit that Commander Price had set up in the center of the executive chamber. The air filled with images of stars, planets, and the red dots that represented Veroth territory. The Veroth Dominion consisted of 42 primary systems, she began. Their homeworld, Veroth Prime, sat at the center of their territory like a spider in a web. From there, their leadership controlled everything. Military movements, food distribution, communication networks, all of it flowed through Veroth Prime. She zoomed out the display to show the full extent of the Empire. The council members made sounds of discomfort as they saw how much space the Veroth had controlled. Their fleet numbered approximately 38,000 vessels of various classes. Their ground forces exceeded 500 billion soldiers across their occupied territories. By any reasonable calculation, they should have been unbeatable. Representative Althan spoke. And yet you beat them with 200 ships. That seems like a story from mythology, not military history. Santos nodded. If we had tried to fight them directly, we would have been destroyed in ours. 200 ships against 38,000 is not a battle. It is suicide. So we did not fight them directly. She manipulated the display to show the first phase of the campaign. Humans have developed many ways of fighting over our history. When a smaller force faces a larger one, the smaller force does not charge into battle and hope for the best. Instead, it looks for weaknesses. It strikes where the enemy is not expecting. It uses speed and surprise to overcome strength. Small blue dots appeared at the edges of Veroth's space, moving quickly and then disappearing. Our first targets were not military. We did not attack their fleets or their armies. We attacked their eyes and ears, communication relays, sensor networks, intelligence outposts. Within 3 weeks, we had blinded 60% of their territory. Their systems could no longer talk to each other. Their fleets could not coordinate. Each colony became an island, cut off from the rest of the empire. Dr. Walsh stepped forward. While our strike teams were hitting their communications, I was leading a different kind of operation. The Veroth were dependent on a very specific diet. Their bodies required certain proteins that could only be found in processed organic matter. They had developed massive agricultural operations to produce food for their population. He changed the display to show several green planets covered in farming facilities, introduced biological agents into their food supply, not poisons that would kill them immediately. That would have been too obvious. Instead, we created diseases that attacked their crops, their livestock, and the processing plants that turned raw materials into edible food. Within 2 months, famine had begun to spread across their territory. Admiral Cole spoke next. You must understand something about the Vareth. They were not united by loyalty or ideology. They were united by power. Their government maintained control by providing food and protection to the population. When the food stopped coming and the communications went dark, that control began to break down. The display showed riots erupting on Vareth colony worlds. Military units fighting each other instead of defending against external threats. Government officials being torn apart by angry mobs. The species they had enslaved saw their opportunity, Commander Price added. When the Vareth were strong, their slaves were too afraid to resist. When the Vareth began to starve and fight among themselves, that fear disappeared. Uprisings began on every occupied world. Slaves killed their masters. Prisoners escaped from labor camps. The empire began to eat itself. Santos resumed her explanation. All of this was according to plan. We spent years studying the Varath before we launched our campaign. We knew their psychology, their social structure, their dependencies. We knew exactly how to hurt them in ways they could not recover from. She highlighted a series of coordinated attacks on the display. Once the chaos was widespread enough, we began the second phase. Targeted assassinations of military commanders. Destruction of shipyard facilities. Attacks on fuel depots that left their remaining fleet stranded without the ability to move. We never gave them a chance to regroup or adapt. Every time they tried to organize a response, we hit them somewhere else. This seems almost cruel, said the being made of light, speaking for the first time. Its voice was like music, beautiful and strange. You did not simply defeat them. You tortured them. Admiral Cole met the being's gaze without flinching. They tortured us for 300 years. They bred our children in cages. They ate our families while they were still screaming. Do not speak to me of cruelty. The chamber fell silent. Santos continued after a moment. The final phase began 6 months ago. By then, the Vareth Dominion had lost 70% of its military capacity. Their government had collapsed on most worlds. Their population was starving and turning on itself. They were no longer an empire. They were just scattered groups of survivors fighting over scraps. The display showed the human fleet now grown from its original 200 ships to nearly 3,000. Other species had joined the campaign, former slaves who wanted revenge against their tormentors. We gave them a chance to surrender, Cole said. I broadcast a message to every Vareth world, offering them the opportunity to lay down their weapons and face judgment for their crimes. I told them that if they did not surrender, we would destroy them completely. They did not surrender, Morvith observed. Most of them did, actually, Cole replied. The civilian population on dozens of worlds gave up without a fight. They were tired of war, tired of hunger, tired of living in fear. We accepted their surrender and placed them under military administration. She paused, her expression hardening. But the military leadership refused. They gathered what remained of their fleet at Vareth Prime and prepared for a final stand. 8,000 ships, crewed by fanatics who believed they could still win. Who believed that their gods would protect them? Santos showed the final battle on the display. Ships exploding in the darkness of space. Energy beams cutting through armor. Fighters swarming around larger vessels like insects around dying animals. The Battle of Varath Prime lasted 19 hours. We lost 147 ships and 62,000 soldiers. They lost everything. The display showed the human fleet in orbit around the Vareth homeworld. The planet below was burning. We landed ground forces to secure the remaining processing centers and free any surviving captives. Then we systematically eliminated every member of the Varath military and government who had participated in the harvest of sentient species. How many? Althan asked quietly. 47 million, Cole replied. We killed 47 million Varath in the ground campaign. Not soldiers defending their homes. War criminals who had participated in genocide. We recorded their names, documented their crimes, and executed them according to the laws of war. The being of light spoke again. And the rest? The civilians, the children, those who did not participate? They live, Cole said, under our supervision, for now. We are not monsters. We did not seek to exterminate the Varith species. We sought to end the system that had allowed them to prey on others. That system is now destroyed. Santos deactivated the display. The campaign is complete. The Varith Dominion no longer exists. The species they enslaved have been freed. The processing centers have been shut down. Humanity has achieved its objective. She looked around at the council members, seeing the shock and fear in their eyes. We did not do this alone. Dozens of species joined our cause once they saw that victory was possible. But we started it. We planned it. We led it. And we finished it. Admiral Cole stepped forward. Now you know what humanity is capable of. We hope you'll remember it. Dr. Henry Walsh had been a healer all his life. His hands had stitched wounds, set bones, and delivered babies on 3 different worlds. He had sworn an oath to protect life and reduce suffering, standing before the Galactic Council. He wondered if that oath meant anything anymore. The Council had requested a detailed account of what humanity had found in the Varith processing centers. They wanted evidence of the crimes that had justified the destruction of an entire empire. Henry understood their need to know. He also wished he could forget everything he had seen. The first facility we liberated was on a moon called Kethron 7, he began, keeping his voice steady through years of practice. Our intelligence suggested it was a medium-sized operation, holding approximately 50,000 captives. We landed 4,000 soldiers and expected to encounter light resistance. He activated his datapad and projected images onto the chamber's display system. The council members shifted uncomfortably as they saw the facility's exterior. A gray structure that seemed designed to crush the spirit of anyone who looked at it. The resistance was not light. The Varith garrison fought to the last soldier. We lost 800 people taking that facility. When we finally broke through the main doors, we understood why they had fought so hard. The images changed to show the interior. Row after row of cages, stacked from floor to ceiling. Each cage contained a human being. Most of them were barely alive, their bodies wasted from malnutrition and abuse. They had been bred there. Henry continued. Generation after generation, born in cages, living in cages, dying in cages. The oldest humans in that facility were 40 years old. None of them had ever seen the sky. None of them had ever walked more than 10 steps in any direction. They did not know what Earth was. They did not know that anyone was coming to save them. Commander Price spoke. The medical teams worked around the clock for 3 weeks, treating the survivors and preparing them for transport. Many of them could not walk. Their muscles had never developed properly because they had never had room to move. Some of them could not speak. They had been punished so severely for making noise that they had become permanently silent. The children were the worst, Henry said quietly. The Varith considered human children to be a delicacy. The processing centers bred them specifically for consumption. We found records indicating that over 8 million children had been eaten at that single facility over the past century. The being made of light made a sound that might have been weeping. Even High Chancellor Morvith seemed disturbed, his ancient face showing emotion for the first time. We liberated 17 facilities during the campaign, Henry continued. Each one was worse than the last. The Varath had been perfecting their methods for centuries. They knew exactly how much food to provide to keep humans alive but too weak to resist. They knew how to breed for maximum yield. They treated us like livestock because to them, that is exactly what we were. Admiral Cole stepped forward. I want to be clear about something. The images Dr. Walsh is showing you are not propaganda. They are not exaggerations. They are documentation of what we found, recorded by our soldiers as evidence for war crimes tribunals. Every Varath we executed was given a trial, presented with evidence of their crimes, and offered the opportunity to defend themselves. How many defended themselves? Elthan asked. Cole replied. They did not believe they had done anything wrong. In their culture, preying on lesser species was a religious duty. They expected us to understand this. They expected us to accept it. She paused, her expression hardening. We did not understand, We did not accept, and we made sure they knew why they were dying. Lieutenant Santos spoke next. The ground campaign on Vareth Prime was the largest military operation in human history. 12 million soldiers landed on the planet's surface over a period of 3 days. Our primary objective was to secure the Central Processing Complex, the largest facility in the Dominion. She showed images of the assault. Human soldiers advancing through burning streets. Vareth fighters being cut down by precision fire. Buildings collapsing as artillery strikes hit their foundations. The Vareth military leadership had retreated to the processing complex, believing that we would not destroy it while human captives were still inside. They were using our own people as shields. What did you do? Morvith asked. We went in after them, Santos replied. Room by room, corridor by corridor. We fought through 47 levels of that FAQ. Illity, killing every Vareth soldier we encountered. It took 6 days. We lost 90,000 soldiers in that building alone. Dr. Walsh continued the story. I entered the facility with the medical teams once the fighting was over. What we found in the lower levels will haunt me until the day I die. He showed images that made several council members look away. Humans in various stages of processing. Bodies hanging from hooks. Children in cages waiting to be taken to the feeding chambers. We saved 4 million people from that facility. Another 9 million had already been consumed during the war, eaten by Vareth, who were trying to stockpile food before they ran out. The leadership had ordered the processing accelerated once they realized they were losing. Commander Price's mechanical arm sparked as he clenched his fist. I found my sister in that facility. She had been taken in the harvest 40 years ago. I spent my entire career hoping I would find her, hoping I could bring her home. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. She was in the feeding chamber when we arrived. I was 3 minutes too late. The chamber was absolutely silent. Admiral Cole spoke quietly. Every human who fought in this war has a story like that. Every one of us lost someone to the Vareth. Parents, children, siblings, friends. We did not fight for abstract principles or political goals. We fought because we loved people who were taken from us, and we wanted to make sure it never happened again. She looked at the council members, her eyes fierce. You ask why our ships are stained with blood? You want to know why we killed 47 million Varath in the ground campaign? The answer is simple. They earned it. Every death we dealt was payment for a death they had inflicted on us. Every Varath we executed was a murderer, a torturer, a monster who had participated in genocide. And what happens now? Morvith asked. The Vareth Dominion is destroyed. Your vengeance is complete. What does humanity want from the future? Dr. Walsh answered. We want to heal. We have 4 million traumatized survivors who need care. We have an entire species worth of grief to process. We have veterans who will carry the scars of this war for the rest of their lives. Lieutenant Santos added, we want security. We have proven that we can defend ourselves, but we would rather not fight another war. We want to establish defensive alliances with species who share our values. We want to make sure that no one ever looks at humanity and sees prey again. Commander Price spoke last. We want justice. There are other predatory species in this galaxy. Other empires that prey on the weak. We know their names. We know where they live. For now, we are tired. We need to rest and rebuild. But we have not forgotten what was done to us, and we will not forget what is being done to others. Admiral Cole nodded. Humanity is not asking for charity or special treatment. We are not begging for a seat at your table. We have earned our place in this galaxy through blood and sacrifice. All we ask is that you recognize what we are and what we have accomplished. She stood tall, her uniform still bearing the stains of battle. We are humanity. We were prey. Now we are predators. And we will never be victims again. Morvith studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. The council will deliberate on your status. We will inform you of our decision. Cole nodded and turned to leave, her delegation following behind her. As they walked out of the chamber, every eye in the room followed them. The galaxy had met humanity, and humanity had made an impression that would never be forgotten. The executive session lasted for 3 standard days. Ambassador Kethvorin watched the closed doors of the council chamber and wondered what was being decided behind them. The human delegation had returned to their flagship, a vessel they had named Remembrance, and waited in silence for the verdict. During those 3 days, news of humanity's arrival spread across the galaxy. Communication networks that usually carried trade. Reports and political gossip were suddenly filled with stories about the species that had destroyed the Varith Dominion. Some called them heroes. Some called them monsters. Everyone called them dangerous. Kethvorin had studied the reports carefully. The humans had done something that no other species had managed in 1,000 years. They had not merely defeated the Varoth. They had erased them as a power in galactic affairs. An empire that had controlled 42 systems and terrorized hundreds of species was simply gone, reduced to scattered survivors under human occupation. The implications were staggering. If humanity could do that to the Varith, they could do it to anyone. On the morning of the 4th day, word came that the council had reached a decision. The Grand Assembly Hall filled with representatives from every member species, all of them eager to hear the verdict. Kethvorin found a seat near the back and watched as the human delegation entered. Admiral Kethvorin Cole looked different than she had 3 days ago. She had bathed, changed into a clean uniform, and gotten some sleep. But the hardness in her eyes remained. This was a woman who had seen too much suffering to ever be soft again. Her delegation walked with her. Commander Daniel Price, his mechanical arm now repaired and functioning smoothly. Lieutenant Maria Santos, her small frame tense with anticipation. Dr. Henry Walsh, his gentle face showing the exhaustion of a man who had spent decades fighting to save lives. They stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by hundreds of alien species, and waited. High Chancellor Morvith rose from his obsidian throne. His ancient body moved slowly, but his voice carried the same authority it always had. The Council has reviewed the evidence presented by the human delegation, he began. We have verified their claims regarding the Varith Dominion's activities. We have confirmed the liberation of captive populations across former Varoth territory. We have examined the records of their military campaign and the subsequent tribunals. He paused, surveying the assembly. The question before us is not whether humanity acted with justification. By any reasonable standard, they did. A species attacked them, enslaved them, consumed them for 300 years. They responded with total war. This is their right under any interpretation of natural law. Kethvorin noticed that several representatives were nodding. Others looked uncomfortable. The question is what we do now, Morvith continued. Humanity has revealed themselves to be capable of extraordinary violence when provoked. They have destroyed an empire that this council could not or would not confront. They have demonstrated both ruthlessness and restraint, targeting their enemies while liberating those who suffered alongside them. Representative Althon spoke from his seat. They are a danger to galactic stability. A species that can wage war with such effectiveness should be contained, not welcomed. Admiral Cole responded calmly. We are a danger to those who harm us. We have no interest in conquest. We want only to live in peace, to trade, to explore, to grow. But we will not be victims again. Not ever. The being made of light spoke next. Its voice filled the chamber like music. You speak of peace, but your actions speak of war. How can we trust that you will not turn your weapons against us when it suits your purposes? Dr. Walsh stepped forward. You can trust us because we have already proven ourselves trustworthy. During our campaign against the Varoth, we had opportunities to attack neutral species. We had opportunities to seize territory that did not belong to us. We had opportunities to commit atrocities against civilian populations. He looked around the chamber. We did none of those things. Every action we took was directed at a specific purpose: destroying the Varoth military, liberating captive populations, ending a system of genocide that had operated for 1,000 years. We did not kill for pleasure or profit. We killed because it was necessary, Lieutenant Santos added. We also helped rebuild. The species that were enslaved by the Varath are now free. We have provided them with food, medicine, and security. We have helped them establish new governments and rebuild their societies. We did not simply destroy. We also created. Orveth raised one thin hand to silence the murmuring that had begun in the assembly. The council has debated these questions at length. We have considered every argument, examined every piece of evidence, and consulted with our experts on military affairs and diplomatic relations. He fixed his gaze on Admiral Cole. Council hereby recognizes the United Earth Government as a sovereign entity within galactic space. Diplomatic relations will be established. Trade agreements will be negotiated in due course. Humanity will be granted observer status at council sessions, with full membership available after a probationary period of 50 cycles. The chamber erupted in noise. Some representatives cheered. Others protested. Kethforin simply watched, processing the implications. Morvith raised his hand again for silence. This decision is not made lightly. We understand that humanity represents a significant change in the balance of power within this region of space. We understand that some species will be uncomfortable with their presence. But we also understand that ignoring them is not an option. He looked at Cole with something that might have been respect. You humans are not what we expected to find when we surveyed your world so long ago. You have proven yourselves capable of both terrible wrath and profound compassion. You destroyed an empire, but you also freed 17 species from bondage. The galaxy will watch to see what you become. Admiral Cole stepped forward. Chancellor, we did not come here seeking your approval. We came to inform you of what had transpired and to establish peaceful relations with our neighbors. Whether you accepted us or not, we would have continued to exist. We would have continued to protect our people and those who cannot protect themselves. She looked around the assembly at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. But we are grateful for this opportunity. Humanity has spent 3 centuries preparing for war. Now we would like the chance to prepare for peace. We have much to learn from the species gathered here. We have much to offer in return. We hope that this is the beginning of a new era, one in which humanity stands alongside the other species of this galaxy as equals and partners. Morvith nodded slowly. We hope so as well, Admiral. The alternative does not bear thinking about. The session ended shortly afterward. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them stopped to look at the human delegation. Some nodded in greeting. Others kept their distance. All of them remembered the images of blood-stained ships and burning worlds. Kethvorin approached Admiral Cole as she was preparing to leave. She looked at him with curiosity, but no hostility. Admiral, I am Ambassador Kethvorin of the Silithian Collective. My species earned our council seat 900 years ago after centuries of patient diplomacy and careful politics. Cole nodded. I have read about the Silithians. Your people are known for your patience and wisdom. We are also known for recognizing when the galaxy has changed, Kethvorin said. My government would like to establish direct relations with Earth. We believe there is much we could learn from each other. For the first time since she had arrived, Admiral Cole smiled. It was a small smile, tired and worn, but genuine. We would welcome that, Ambassador. Humanity has been alone for a very long time. We are ready to make friends. She extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Kethvorin studied it for a moment, then reached out with his own appendage and grasped it gently. Then let us begin, he said. Outside the council station, the human fleet still waited. Their ships had been cleaned now, the blood washed away, the damage repaired. But everyone who looked at them remembered what they had looked like when they arrived. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy. They had proven their strength and their willingness to use it. Now, they would have to prove something harder. They would have to prove that they could be trusted with peace. Admiral Catherine Cole looked out at the stars from the observation deck of the Remembrance. Commander Price stood beside her, along with Lieutenant Santos and Dr. Walsh. They had won their war. They had freed their people. They had earned their place among the stars. What happens now? Price asked quietly. Cole considered the question. For 3 centuries, Humanity had lived with a single purpose: destroy the Varoth and free their people. Now that purpose was fulfilled. They needed a new one. Now we build, she said finally. We build ships and stations and colonies. We build alliances and trade networks and diplomatic relationships. We build a future where our children can grow up without fear. She turned to face her officers, the people who had fought beside her through the darkest days of the war. We came here with blood on our hulls and fire in our hearts. We showed the galaxy what we are capable of when we are threatened. Now we need to show them what we are capable of when we are not. Dr. Walsh nodded. Healing takes longer than hurting, but it matters more. Santos smiled grimly. And if anyone tries to hurt us again? Cole's eyes hardened for just a moment. Then she relaxed and shook her head. Then they will learn what the Varith learned. But until that day comes, we focus on building. We focus on growing. We focus on becoming something better than we were forced to be. She looked out at the stars one more time. Humanity has arrived. Now let us see what we can become. The fleet began to move, leaving the council station behind. 47 ships that had once been stained with the blood of their enemies now sailed toward a future they had earned through sacrifice and determination. The galaxy watched them go, and the galaxy remembered. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 cycles. Its walls were made of crystal that had been harvested from dying stars. Its floor was polished stone from a world that no longer existed. Within this ancient chamber, representatives from 347 different species gathered every cycle to discuss the business of running a galaxy ambassador. Kethvorin of the Silithian Collective was bored. He had been sitting in this chamber for 6 hours, listening to debates about mining rights and shipping lanes. His species had waited 900 years to earn their seat on this council. They had followed every rule, submitted every form, and smiled at every insult from the older species who looked down on them. Now they were finally here. Kethvorin was discovering that galactic politics was mostly just waiting. The emergency alarms had not sounded in living memory. Most of the younger delegates did not even know what they were. When the alarms began to scream, the hall fell into chaos. Representatives scrambled for cover. Security forces rushed to defensive positions. The great observation dome above the chamber shifted from its usual display of distant nebulae to show something that made Kethvorin's blood run cold. Ships. 47 of them. They had emerged from fold space at the edge of the system, and they were heading straight for the council station. These ships did not match any design in the galactic database. They were ugly things, all hard angles and brutal lines. They looked like weapons that someone had attached engines to, and they were damaged. Kethvorin could see holes in their hulls, scorch marks from energy weapons, and great gashes where something had torn through their armor. But it was the color that disturbed him most. The ships were stained dark red, as if they had been dipped in blood. High Chancellor Morvith rose from his obsidian throne. He was ancient, even by the standards of his species, which had founded the council itself 10,000 years ago. His body was thin and fragile, but his voice still carried the weight of absolute authority. As unidentified vessels, you have entered protected space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came in a language that the translation matrix struggled to process. It clicked and hummed as it worked, eventually rendering the message in halting phrases. This is Admiral Catherine Cole of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We request immediate audience with the governing body of this sector. We have traveled far, and we bring urgent news. Kethvorin searched his memory. Earth. He had heard that name before, in his studies of galactic history. It was a small blue world in an unremarkable star system at the far edge of the galaxy. The ancient surveys indicated primitive civilizations there. Beings who had not yet discovered fire when the initial probes passed through. That was impossible. Primitive beings did not build starships. Primitive beings certainly did not build warships that looked like they had just finished fighting a major battle. Your vessels, Morvith continued, his tone careful and measured, they appeared damaged, and they appear to be stained with some substance. A long pause followed. When the human spoke again, her voice was flat and cold. "The stains are not our own blood, Chancellor. They belong to the Varith Dominion. What remains of it?" The translation matrix processed the words. A collective gasp echoed through the assembly. Kethvorin felt his heart stop beating for a moment. The Varith Dominion was a nightmare that parents used to frighten their children. They controlled a vast territory beyond the Council's reach. A predatory empire that had consumed 17 civilizations over the past millennium. They were not members of the Council because they had refused membership. They did not want to trade or negotiate. They wanted only to conquer and consume. "That is not possible," declared Representative Althon of the Corvani Federation. He was a large creature, covered in scales that shifted color with his emotions. Right now, they were pale with disbelief. The Varith number in the trillions. Their war fleets darkened the stars of 40 systems. No single species could challenge them. "They did," Admiral Cole replied. 43 hours ago, the chamber erupted in noise. Every species was talking at once, their translators creating a wall of overlapping sound. Kethvorin watched the holographic display showing the human fleet. The ships hung motionless in space, waiting. They did not seem concerned by the weapons that the Council's defense platforms had trained on them. High Chancellor Morveth raised one thin hand, and the chamber fell silent. "You claim to have destroyed the Varith Dominion," he said slowly. "An empire that has terrorized the outer regions for 1,000 years. An empire that we, with all our resources, have never been able to challenge. And you did this in 43 hours? "No," Chancellor Cole responded. "The campaign lasted 3 years. The final battle lasted 43 hours. The Varith homeworld fell 2 days ago. We came here directly from the field of battle. We did not have time to clean our ships." Kethvorin stared at the red-stained holes on the display. That was blood. Real blood from real beings. The humans had killed so many Varith that their blood had coated the exterior of their ships. "Why have you come here?" Morveth asked. "What do you want from us?" "We want nothing from you," Cole said. "We came to introduce ourselves. The galaxy should know that humanity exists now. We are no longer hiding. We are no longer weak. And we are no longer prey." That last word hung in the air. Prey. It was an odd choice of words. Representative Althon stepped forward. "You speak as if the Varith had wronged you specifically. What grievance did your species have against them?" Another long pause. When Cole spoke again, her voice was different. Harder, colder. "Where survey probes passed through our system. They noted our existence and moved on. We were beneath your notice. What your probes did not detect was that the Varith had found us 2 centuries before. They came not as explorers or diplomats. They came as hunters." Kethvorin felt a chill run through his body. "They took our people," Cole continued. "They harvested us like animals. For 300 years, they bred us in their facilities, used us for labor, for entertainment, for food. They ate us, Chancellor. They considered us livestock." Chamber was utterly silent. Even the translators seemed to hold their breath. "We have spent 3 centuries preparing for this war. We built our fleet in secret. We trained our soldiers in silence. We learned everything we could about our enemy while pretending to be the harmless primitives they believed us to be. And when we were ready, we struck." Admiral Cole's voice softened slightly, but only slightly. "We freed 4 million of our people from their processing centers. 13 million more had already been consumed. We will never forget that number, and we will never allow it to happen again." Morveth sat back on his throne, his ancient face unreadable. "The Council will convene an emergency session to discuss this matter. In the meantime, your fleet may dock at the outer platforms. You will be provided quarters and refreshments." "Thank you, Chancellor," Cole replied. "We will await your decision." The transmission ended. The holographic display showed the human fleet beginning to move toward the docking platforms, their blood-red hulls gleaming in the starlight. Kethvorin looked around the chamber at the representatives of 347 species. He saw fear in their eyes. Not fear of the Varith, who were now destroyed. Fear of the humans, who had destroyed them. A new power had announced itself to the galaxy. and nothing would ever be the same again. Admiral Catherine Cole had not slept in 4 days. Her body was running on stimulants and pure stubborn will. As she walked through the crystalline corridors of the council station, she kept her back straight and her face calm. She would not show weakness in front of these aliens, who had ignored humanity's suffering for so long. Commander Daniel Price walked at her side. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. His left arm was a prosthetic, a replacement for the limb he had lost in the assault on Vereth Prime. The mechanical arm still sparked occasionally, damaged in the final battle, but he refused to let the medical team repair it until the mission was complete. Behind them came Lieutenant Maria Santos, the fleet's chief tactical officer. She was small and quick, with dark eyes that missed nothing. Dr. Henry Walsh walked beside her, serving as both medical officer and diplomatic advisor. He was an older man with gray hair and gentle hands that had saved thousands of lives and ended thousands more. The Council's security forces escorted them through passages that seemed designed to remind visitors of their own insignificance. The ceilings were impossibly high. The walls displayed images of ancient victories and honored heroes from species that had ruled the stars. Before humans had learned to make fire, Catherine did not feel insignificant. She felt tired. She felt angry. And she felt determined to make these comfortable politicians understand what humanity had endured. The executive chamber was smaller than the main assembly hall, but no less impressive. 7 beings sat around a curved table made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. These were the founders, the species that had created the Galactic Council and still controlled its most important decisions. High Chancellor Morvith sat at the center. To his left was Representative Althon of the Corvani Federation, his scales now a deep